Welcome to the Have Good Ripple Effect podcast. Let's jump right in. Hello and welcome back to the Have Good Ripple Effect podcast. I'm Lisa Even, your host, and today we're talking all about because of you stats. Because of you stats. And I'll share what that is in just a moment. But the idea behind because of you stats started for me probably 10 years ago, I would say. And it was this idea that I worked in healthcare, and the people that work in healthcare are typically outcomes based. Meaning, think about going to the doctor. Like, did they make you better? Did you get some relief? And so usually folks in that field are fairly scientific and fairly numbers driven. They want to see that, your condition went down. They want to track your blood pressure and your heart rate, your cholesterol, like all of the things, right? Even our weight. We're like, no, could you not weigh me? At the doctor, like, no, thank you. They track all of these things. And when I was working in healthcare, I quickly realized that being a cheerleader to my team wasn't enough. And we all know that, but I tend to want to not only like show my team that I value them, but also cheer them on. And when that was not enough, right, I realized like, oh, that's not really what a good leader does. I had to think about, okay, well, how do I continue to share the value back to the team in a way that was outcomes based? And so I came up with the idea of because of you stats. And I want to share this because I think there are a number of leaders or even maybe project managers or people on committees, right? Maybe you're in charge of your kid's basketball team. There's something that you are in charge of, and it is your job to get people to do the thing, right? Get them to do the thing. And one of the things I always ask is, are you sharing back to them their impact? Are you sharing back to them their impact? And even maybe a little bit of a nuance in there is, are you doing it preemptively? It doesn't have to be after they've made the impact. It can be before. And so what I mean by that is I started to share the evidence to my team that they had progress and purpose. Progress and purpose. And I would share things like how many patients they had seen. Because in our space, we were taking care of patients, day in and day out. And so we had a number of them come through our space. Some days it was a lot more than others. And so at the end of each month, I would say, did you know how many patients' lives we touched this month? Do you know how many patients' lives we've touched this month? And I would pause in our morning meeting or morning huddle. And I would say, make it up. If it was 50 patients, I'd say, we're on average taking care of 50 patients a day. And you times that by, 20 to 25 days a month. And then you times that by each of those patients. A lot of them bring family members to their appointments because I was in the neurosciences and behavioral health spaces. A lot of those people bring their family with them. So when you think about how many lives we are touching, and then I would even go further to say how many people we've cared for, how many, family members they bring with them, but think about how many kids, how many aunts, how many grandmas, how many parents those people touch. That's our ripple effect. And I would share those stats in a way of just, I want you to remember when we have a really rough day, because in a customer service, highly protocolized, very regulated, an environment where you had to be really like clean and hygienic, right? We had all of these barriers. Think about how much actual impact we're making in spite of all those really hard things. We also would talk about how many phone calls we've made, how much financial impact, right, we were bringing to the organization. And my goal was each time I brought a because of you stat to kind of flip between those soft things and those hard things. So I would share a story about a patient whose life we had changed. Maybe it was a young person where we took their brain tumor out and they were now graduating high school. Like, they would have never gotten to do that. And then I would flip over, and a few days later I would share, like, I just want you guys to realize how many patients have come through our doors, this week or this month. And it was almost as if I was updating them on why they mattered. So I used more of an update type of tone than I did a cheerleader tone. And I would say, like, I hope that on a really hard day, you remember this. And I hope you go home tonight and tell your family, like, I have made him, like, I'm not only seeing it, but we're tracking it. Now, whether you work in the insurance industry and you think about how many people called you on the worst day of their life, we had a house fire due to lightning a few years back. And I remember calling that insurance carrier and being like, help me. Right? Like, I do not even know what to do with this half burned house with all of my stuff in it. Now, we were safe. Our kids, we got out after lightning hit our house. We were immediately like, we exited because our electricity wasn't working quite right. So we didn't have much like craziness in the way of like trauma or injury or anything like that. But clearly, I was calling them on one of the worst days of our lives. And I think about what the because of you stats could look like for a team in the insurance industry. Like, my goodness. Maybe it's construction and you're a leader and you say, you know how many nails we've gone through this month? Do you know how many nails we have put in homes that people will live in? Maybe you're in the education arena and you're thinking about students touched, or, a little part of their impact are these students are going to go on to create like careers and they're our future generation of leaders. Maybe you're in the financial services industry and you're thinking about how many people get to retire because of the planning that you do. Maybe you work at a gas station and you think, I help people go on adventure, right? Like, I help them get to work, I help them get home, I help them go on adventures. What are the things that your team is causing? Because of you, we are causing this impact. And hopefully it's a positive one, right? You're sharing the because of you stats because you want to see engagement go up. But you might have heard this story before, but there was a gentleman who was a janitor at NASA. And anytime somebody asked him what he did for a living, he said, oh, I put rockets on the moon. Now, he didn't put rockets on the moon. It was a combination of every single person that went into making that happen. But he even said, like, if we do not have a clean floor for these engineers to develop, if we do not have a clean space for, these experiments to be run, this rocket is not getting off the ground. And part of what I challenge you to go back and do is think about for yourself, like, because of you, right? Your impact, your good ripple effect. What are you doing, right, to make a small and tiny impact that over time accumulates into purpose and progress? But also, if you're a leader or someone who's leading a thing, whether it's a committee or a project or a team, what is the impact of that group? Now, the thing like I started with at the beginning was you can't go into cheerleader mode 100%, but you can certainly update them in a way that feels kind of, I always say, like, firm and energetic of like, I just want you to know because of you, dot, dot, dot. Now, a quick story. I went to Staples for some copies. I host in-person events and virtual events. And oftentimes for my in-person events, I will print a stack of copies. And so on the day that I went to Staples, I had about 200 copies that I was picking up. And the person that was helping me, he rang me up and you could just tell he was having one of those days, right? He wasn't unfriendly, but he really wasn't friendly. And he didn't actually like pay attention to the fact that I was a new human. He was just kind of like, here you go, da da da. And I paused and I said, hey, real quick, I know you're busy. How many copies do you guys put out in a day? And he looked at me and he's like, thousands. And I said, I just want you to know how many meetings you make possible. Like, how many meetings you make possible. I said, and even further than that, maybe some moments, whether it's birthday parties or invitations to weddings, or in my case, right, like the copies for my meeting. But I just said, like, hey, thank you for everything you do. You make so many moments possible. Have a great day. And I laugh because he was getting ready to like hand me my receipt and he looks at my copies and he's like, do you want a bag? Do you want a bag for your copies? And I laughed in my mind because I'm like, yes. Now he kind of snapped out of this, like, I'm just doing the next thing. I'm just doing the next thing. And you could tell for just about a half a second, he was like, I matter. No, I was like, I don't need a bag. Thank you so much. And I took my copies and I went. But I wanted him to know, like, you make the world go round. And there certainly is something to purpose and progress that really does motivate a group of people. If you're looking to kind of add a little like boost to your team or that thing that you're leading, I would say throw in a because of you stat. And it's going to feel a little awkward and they'll kind of sit there and like, oh, okay, whatever, thank you. But I promise you, they won't forget. People often remember the last interaction that you had with them. And so if you can make your last interaction every time feel like a good and positive, energetic moment, you'll see a change. You'll see a little bit of success within it. So what are your because of you stats? Are you sharing them? Now I invite you to get out there and do it. And of course, circle back. I want to hear about it. I'm on social media. You can send me a message on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'll keep an eye out for because of you stats that you're sharing with your team. Make sure you send those and keep listening. If you know somebody who needs this, share this episode with them. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Have Good Ripple Effect podcast. To book me for your next event or get more content like this, visit lisaeven.com. Thanks for listening. Visit lisaeven.com to learn about events and grab a copy of my book, Joy is My Job.